Hey everybody, Nick here. This is the second part of a two-part breakdown of the last sprint of Altfire's development, focusing on building out the level creation pipeline. Part 1 tackled the approach to level geometry and why I started with levels so early, and this part will dive into textures, props, and the beginnings of the art style for the game. So, let's get into it. Alright, in the last video we made some structural geometry. Now, let's dress that with textures. For a while, I struggled with what I wanted the texture and overall art style to look like for Altfire. I knew it had to be relatively lo-fi, because I like that art style, but also for practical reasons. There is going to be a lot of art needed for this game, and as one person, I need to be able to make that art and recreate it over the course of the next few years. At first, I was going to do a pixelated, unfiltered texture kind of look, but that didn't feel right. A lot of indie shooters had been going down that route, and while it looks smashing, I kinda want mine to stand out a little bit. Plus, it still didn't feel right for the game. Luckily, around that time I was watching Arcane Season 2, again, and their masterful use of hand-painted 3D characters and props really gives the show a distinct look. Now, I'm not going to claim I can even come close to Fortitia's artistry, but it did get me thinking. My concept art and sketches have a pretty messy, brushstroke-filled look to them, often full of vibrant color blocking. What if my textures looked like that too? Bring a sense of me into the game. Not only is this more artistically authentic for me, but it feels unique, and since it's my natural art style, the ability to make it would come quickly. And thus, bam! A sketchy, messy, hand-painted art style across lower fidelity stylized textures and designed with bright color blocking elements to them. A look I quite like, and that is an authentic artistic representation of my style, one I can hone and keep up over the course of the game's development. Each texture is a creative mix of stock texture masks like ambient occlusion, height, noise, and roughness, overlaid on top of hand-painted additive RGB color masks which are controlled in Unreal and placed on a fully rough, flat material. There are also texture masks for opacity masking and emissive colors too. This texture packing method means I can control 4 colors to make up the texture, and blending those 4 layers with a single 512 by 512 PNG file. Honestly, if I was feeling spicy, I could probably eke out a 5th one using the alpha, but that didn't turn out so great, so I stuck with the 4. The result is a lot of control over the look and feel of the texture, in the context in which they're being used. I'll admit, after getting through the props, which we'll talk about next, there are some changes I'd like to make to the style, but the process is straightforward enough that I could get all these textures made in just a few days. And yeah, some of them aren't done yet, but hey, it's a lot of textures, and the whole process was front-loaded with learning how exactly to go about making textures in the first place. Side note, I have to give a big shout out to 3dtextures.me. That website is full of amazing free textures that I've used as the base for many of mine. Seriously, consider giving it a look if you need textures, and if you want to download them more conveniently and support the creator, donate to their Patreon. Once I had things like walls and floors sorted, it was time to tackle objects. As nice as the textures were, you have to have some meshes to populate the space with. So I gathered a ton of references and got to modeling the environment props in Blender. Because it was a theme I knew I'd use, I targeted a sci-fi industrial look first. Piece of advice though, when you're doing this yourself, don't make 96 assets in a single batch. Turns out 96 meshes needing modeling, UVing, collisions, importing, textures, materials is a lot. I definitely bit off more than I could chew here, but I'm happy with the result. That being said, next time I'll work in smaller batches. Once the mesh was modeled, optimized, and UV'd in Blender, I would export them out for use in Unreal. This is where the batch export plugin for Blender came in clutch and saved me a major headache. Almost. The batch exporter dutifully takes all the selected meshes in the scene and exports them according to my Unreal static mesh standard. But the way Unreal handles collision meshes puts a bit of a wrinkle in this process. Collisions for FBX files in Unreal are done by, in Blender, for example, having a mesh and then another mesh on top of it with the name UCX underscore and the name of that mesh. So when you export as an FBX, you export both objects, but Unreal ignores the UCX one and assigns it as the collision mesh. Great for bespoke collisions, bad if you have 96 assets at the same time, since the batch exporter just thinks the UCX files are also meshes to export. So I had to select all the meshes and hide the UCX meshes and batch export. Then, one at a time, export and overwrite the FBX file so that it has the UCX data. Then bulk import those into Unreal. The good news is, past that point, overriding the FBX without the UCX and importing it into Unreal doesn't remove the UCX data from the Unreal mesh. In other words, you only have to do this once. Thank God. After that headache, I would use 3D Coat to texture paint the relevant meshes with different exports for diffuse maps, as well as a color mask, opacity mask, and emissive mask where necessary. Honestly, 3D Coat is such a cool program. If you want to get into texture painting, are willing to spend some money on an app, but don't want to pay Big Dobie, seriously consider giving 3D Coat a try. It's definitely a quirky piece of kit, but it does what it does better and more consistently than anything else for the price. The result is some pretty spiffy looking meshes, if I do say so myself, which hold what I think is a charming amount of artistic messiness. There are so many more props to make, even just for the sci-fi industrial set that I've half made here, but those will come in time. This process has validated that I like the way the art style is looking, and makes me really excited to work on things like weapons and characters soon. As I said, I'm clearly not done here. There's lots of incomplete textures and way more meshes to make. Not to mention, I wanted to have things like decals and grit and grime and puddles and smoke effects and mist and light shafts and light source blueprints and other sorts of stuff. But life had some other plans, which paired with the fact that 96 regular assets is a lot of stuff to make while also figuring out how you're making it in the first place, didn't quite get it done on time. That being said, this whole process has given me the confidence I need to move forward with my level design and geometry, texture pipeline, asset pipeline, and overall world creation process. Gone are the questions of how am I going to make it happen, and now it's just a matter of making it happen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little showcase of what I've been working on. It has certainly been a lot of work and a lot of long nights to get there, but I think the result was worth it. Let me know what you think of the art style, about the processes I used to get there, and if you want to follow the project, links are in the description for Blue Sky, itch.io, the Skypire community Discord, and the newly minted webpage for the game. A demo isn't quite ready, but I'm hoping that it might come a little later this year. Thank you for watching. I've been Nick, and until next time, take care.